More prominent members of Taiwan's main opposition party head to China just a month before Taiwan inaugurates its next president. The U.S.'s top diplomat meets with Chinese President Xi Jinping in a high-stakes Beijing visit. Could cars be getting even more high-tech? We find out what could be in store for drivers. Plus, athletic wear turned high fashion. Taipei Fashion Week opens with some sporty designs. Good evening and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Eric Gao. Thanks for tuning in. A delegation of lawmakers from Taiwan's opposition Kuomintang are on their way to China. This trip follows another high-profile visit from a prominent KMT politician, Taiwan's former president, Ma Ying-jeou. Now, our reporter Tiffany Wong is following this story for us from Taipei. Tiffany, what's going on with all these visits?
Well, the timing of these visits is significant, both of them occurring just 1 month before Taiwan's next president, Ching-te, is set to take office. And both the KMT delegation as well as former President Ma said that they want to have these visits to promote peace in the Taiwan Strait. Specifically, the KMT lawmakers say that they want to promote trade with China as well as a reopening of tourism on both sides. Here's what they said ahead of their trip.
这一次我们代表台湾的新民意，国会最大的党，能够进行和平破冰之旅，希望把8年中断的两岸关系能够把它恢复。台湾人民热爱和平、自由、繁荣，更需要安定。台湾海峡更需要和平。
Now, during his trip, former President Ma even met with Chinese President Xi Jinping. But it's unlikely that these KMT lawmakers will receive such a high-level audience.
Tiffany, what's the reaction been in Taiwan to this trip? Are there bigger geopolitical implications?
Well, it's notable that these are some of the few exchanges we've seen across the Taiwan Strait in recent years. That's because China stopped having official communications with Taiwan's government ever since current President Tsai Ing-wen took office in 2016. That's because she refused to recognize Taiwan as a part of China. Now, the incoming president, Ching-te, is also from her party, the Democratic Progressive Party. He says that he wants to have a direct communication with China. He doesn't want it to just be these KMT delegations communicating with the Chinese side. But his party also says that while the KMT delegation is there, they should not make any official promises or agreements with China, that they are not representing Taiwan's government. Now, also of note is that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is on a visit to China, and he just met with Chinese President Xi Jinping. We're still waiting to hear updates on what they've said, and we'll have more for you later on TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for that, Tiffany. That was Tiffany Wong in Taipei following the KMT's latest trip to China. Concerns about rockslides continue to grow in quake-hit Hualien County in eastern Taiwan. Now, that area has been hit by heavy rains and a series of aftershocks.
梅雨季节快到了，04、03的影响，地震的影响之下，如果开始100多公吨或是200多公吨的石头掉下来的话，我想一定是跳跃式的，一定会掉到哪里去，我们后果不堪设想。
Now, people living downhill from a mine are particularly concerned. The mountainside in the county's Hualien district already slipped after a big 2019 earthquake, but the landslide has grown bigger since the April 3rd tremor. The company that owns the mine says there's no immediate danger, but it will draw up plans to clear away any dangerous boulders. Recent university graduates in Taichung are facing the lowest wages out of Taiwan's major cities. Maddie Anstruther has more.
Taiwanese students are known for their diligent study habits. But in Taiwan's central city, Taichung, they may be starting to wonder whether a college diploma is worth the effort. Recent Labour Ministry figures show that the average monthly wage of a university graduate in Taichung is just $1,100, the lowest for the group in all of Taiwan's major cities. It also has the highest proportion of new graduates earning just the minimum wage. Low wages are an issue for more than just this one city. Taiwan's wages have fallen behind its peer economies across the board, despite its highly profitable companies.
The reason why Taiwan's wages are so low is because the profits are actually very high as compared to other advanced countries. But then the problem is that Taiwan's unionization rate is so low, there's very little bargaining power.
But just how low are the wages? South Korea has a similar GDP per capita to Taiwan, but the hourly minimum wage is 25% higher. And the median monthly salary there is almost 35% higher. In January, Taiwan boosted the minimum wage, yet high inflation has meant that wages actually went down in real terms last year. This loss in spending power can take a heavy toll on workers.
I think for workers, it does affect their ability to be more engaged at work, to find happiness at work. It also results in more brain drain and Taiwan losing talent to other countries.
Despite these challenges, back in Taichung, not all students seem that worried.
觉得算是它正在一个开发阶段吧，就像是有很多的从化区，对，然后我觉得它未来的潜力应该会蛮大的。
The city and the country will have to wait and see if the next generation can keep their optimism once they get into the workforce. Dolphine Chen, Chris Gorin, and Maddie Anstruther for TaiwanPlus.
Think of Taiwan and many people think semiconductors. But the country is also a major exporter of electronic displays. More and more of these screens are now being used in vehicles. But there's debate over whether they help improve traffic safety or make it worse. Chris Gorin explains.
Screens, they're everywhere. In your living room, on your desk, in your pocket, even on your wrist. And there's more coming your way.
We have a lot of bendable, flexible, transparent, things that displays couldn't do in years past.
And Taiwanese companies are hoping to bring screens to people wherever they can.
This is Touch Taiwan, a convention for display technologies. Displays have been one of Taiwan's fastest growing exports this year. And among the technologies relevant to everyday life that have been getting a lot of attention are vehicle displays, both for inside and outside the car.
In the next generation of cars, screens might take up the whole dashboard, roll up inside the seat, even take up part of the side windows. But do these high-tech screens improve the driving experience? Not according to the research. Studies from the UK and Sweden have shown that using touch screens is even more distracting than using smartphones while driving, and it makes people worse drivers.
Those touch screen and big screens are definitely a distraction. But the automakers have been implementing this strategy for the past few years, mostly for cost-saving strategies, because they don't have to install physical buttons and dials.
But manufacturers say screens could also improve safety by putting them on the outside of the car, for example, letting other cars know if it's slowing down or if pedestrians are nearby.
There is lots of different kinds of situations on the road or different very chaotic traffic. So this display will definitely improve the overall driver safety.
So when might we start seeing these screens showing up in new cars?
For micro LEDs, that's still an industry secret, but sooner than you think, that's all I can say.
Whatever your opinion is of having more screens in and on cars, it seems that they're coming. So new car buyers, buckle up. You're in for a long ride into the future. Ryan Wu and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's biggest annual fashion event kicked off Thursday night with a sporty theme and some of the country's top athletes starting their stuff on the runway. Our reporter Sandy Chi was there for the opening.
Doing warm-ups in front of hundreds of people, these athletes are not getting ready for a sports event. No, they're prepping to walk down the runway at the opening night of Taiwan's biggest fashion event. This is Taipei Fashion Week Autumn-Winter 2024, and this year's theme is Cultural Olympiad, echoing an international event being held at the same time as the Paris Games. The fashion show integrates elements of fashion, sports, and culture.
这一次 Fashion Show 的主题，我们选择了文化奥运，也就是说，我们希望在这个运动赛事背后，其实有一些文化的价值跟精神，包括在这一次里面，除了新增的这些运动以外，我们主张的是包括平权、弱势、性别这一类。
Over 70 outfits from 6 local designers were featured on opening night. Putting together looks that match the theme wasn't always easy, especially for brands that normally aren't that sporty.
Storywear is a zero waste fashion, so everything should be upcycled and recycled. And it's really hard to apply synthetic fabric into this kind of a collection. But we are very fortunate that in Taiwan, there's a technology that using a cut-off fabric and remake into a brand new fabric. So it's using zero waste fabric and making this very sporty collection.
There were also outfits designed by Justin Zhou, the creator of the official uniforms for Taiwan's national team, that will be worn at the opening ceremony of the Paris Games.
其实运动是一个媒介，它不是一定要运动穿得很怎么样，很像运动，它是有更多进到生活、进到伸展台。所以我希望透过这一次，能够让大家知道，其实台湾的文化价值能够展现在不管是奥运的进场服或者伸展台上面。
Over 10 of the models gracing the runway are Taiwan's top athletes, with 3 of them preparing to compete in the Paris Olympics. These Olympians include shooter Wu Jiaying, weightlifter Fang Wanling, and taekwondo athlete Luo Jialing.
其实这次算是第一次参与台北时装周，那自己本身也是非常的期待，然后也非常的兴奋。
因为这是我第2次参加台北时装周，只是比较不一样的是，我上次是来看秀，然后这次是来走秀，是一个非常不一样的体验，让自己其实也是蛮紧张的。
Despite feeling nervous before the show, these athletes gave an all-star performance on the runway. Hundreds of spectators were there to witness Taiwan's vibrant and diverse cultural spirit expressed in fashion. While opening night is over, Taipei Fashion Week will run through April 29th with a variety of shows and exhibitions. Kama Xu and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwanese drag queen Nymphia Wind will perform in Paris as part of the Olympic cultural program. Now, Nymphia won the latest season of the U.S. TV competition RuPaul's Drag Race, the first Taiwanese winner ever, drawing international attention to the country's drag scene. The Culture Ministry now says that she will join around 20 other Taiwanese performance groups for the Cultural Olympiad that's held alongside the Summer Games. We're going to take a quick break, but stay tuned, because up next here on TaiwanPlus News, we find out what people are doing to protect the heritage of Taiwan's remaining military villages.
At Connected, we believe in the power of dialogue.
Taipei 101 station.
It's not just about the headlines, it's about finding common ground. Join the conversation.
Connected with Divya Gopalan on TaiwanPlus.
I'm Ed Moon in Taiwan's Jinmen Islands, and you're watching TaiwanPlus News, the voice of freedom in Asia.
过人生的话，你发现说我们大部分都是爱美。
我自己少遇见一朵花，我可能就不是这个样子。
开始思考什么叫做一个本土性，
大声的唱出来说我是台湾人。
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Emergency workers in Gaza say they have finished their search of mass graves at a hospital in the south of the enclave. They've uncovered 392 bodies spread across 3 grave sites at the Nasser hospital complex after the withdrawal of Israeli forces there. It comes after the discovery of hundreds of bodies at another hospital in the north of Gaza earlier this month. Israel's military says it is not responsible for burying people in mass graves and that the graves at Nasser were dug by Palestinians months ago. Officials in Gaza are still working to identify the bodies. They say the bodies include children. Meanwhile, pro-Palestinian protests are intensifying on campuses across the U.S. Hundreds of students have been arrested across the country, but this police crackdown does not appear to be working, with more and more students walking out of class. Rosie Greninger has the latest.
Police officers clash with protesters at a pro-Palestinian rally at the University of Southern California. These demonstrations have erupted at several college campuses in the United States, as students protest universities' financial ties to Israel and demand an immediate ceasefire to the Israel-Hamas war.
It is insane that this educational institution that preaches all these high, lofty ideals about education and understanding and making the world a better place is making money off of death and destruction and genocide.
The action has led to hundreds of arrests. It began peacefully at New York's Columbia University 9 days ago. Students set up an encampment on the school grounds, demanding they cut investments from any company supporting Israel's war in Gaza. Columbia University says it's holding talks with protesters to reach an agreement to remove the encampment. And it's also given them a deadline by which to dismantle their tents. Just meters away, House Speaker Mike Johnston was at the Ivy League school to address its Jewish students. He also called on protesters to end their demonstration.
My message to the students inside the encampment is go back to class and stop the nonsense.
These pro-Israel lawmakers called on the university's president to resign, saying the protests have made Israeli students feel unsafe. Those Israeli students at Columbia and several other colleges have staged counter-protests alongside pro-Palestinian rallies. It's a complex issue for US President Joe Biden to navigate, given America's support for Israel in the war and his dependence on these young voters at this year's election.
The president believes that free speech, debate, and non-discrimination on college campuses are important. They're important American values, and so he'll always be very clear. We will always be very clear about that here.
A message that's unlikely to satisfy either side of the argument. And the movement is growing, with students in Paris now calling on the government to help Palestinians. But despite the crackdown from police in the United States and the country's alliance with Israel, these outraged students continue to camp on university grounds, making it clear they won't stop until there is tangible action against the devastation unfolding in Gaza. James Lin and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
The Philippine Navy is sailing out with allies, the U.S. and France, as part of its annual Bikan military exercises. TaiwanPlus was invited on board a Philippine ship to view the drills up close. Rick Lauer has this report.
This is Philippine Navy patrol vessel Ramon Alcaraz. We're about 10 nautical miles off the southwestern Philippine island of Palawan, and we're part of a tactical formation. It's all part of annual war games between the US and the Philippines, known as Bikan, which literally means shoulder to shoulder. This year, for the first time, includes both Australia and France. It's a show of unity to counter China and its increasingly aggressive territorial claims in this area. As these drills take place, China has doubled the number of ships operating in the South China Sea. These contested waters, there is a delicate balance of power. The Philippines is, of course, also the closest point to Taiwan, which is also subjected to Chinese aggression. As this formation heads north, it becomes more likely that these vessels will encounter Chinese ships. This then becomes a show of unity from the Philippine military, which is outmatched by China but has powerful friends. Alex Chen and Rick Lowett in the Philippines for TaiwanPlus.
Haiti's new transitional government has vowed to restore stability after months of chaos and gang violence.
Notre pays se retrouve à la croisée des chemins, à la recherche de solutions idoines pour sortir de cette crise politique multidimensionnelle.
Haiti's new interim Prime Minister, Michel Patrick Boisvert, was sworn in after former Prime Minister Ariel Henry officially resigned. Criminal gangs had gained control of the country's capital, Port-au-Prince, which led to a widespread humanitarian crisis. One powerful gang leader says talks about Haiti's political future must include the gangs. New laws are now enforced to help cut the use of plastic in Hong Kong. The city's 7.5 million residents churn through tens of thousands of tons of plastic every year. Wesley Lewis has the story.
Order up? Hong Kong restaurants could soon go plastic-free. On Earth Day, the government announced they would rid the city of single-use plastic utensils, straws, and takeaway containers. But as diners have noticed, many restaurants have not gotten the memo.
喺隔離嗰度買係啊，所以佢都有俾我咧。咁來都冇話我冇 mention 話佢俾唔俾我，咁佢都照俾我啦。
The government has said they will give a 6-month grace period until they start enforcing fines of up to around $12,700. Hong Kong currently has the highest per capita usage of plastic in East Asia. Each Hong Konger consumes an average of 121 kilograms per year, compared to 67 kilograms in Taiwan, and even less in other countries. Hong Kong residents are generally on board with the new policy, but are concerned that the city might have difficulty adjusting to the new normal.
我覺得實施還實施，但係政府可能要諗翻一啲好啲嘅配套嘅嘢俾我哋咯，係啊，即係你唔好話突然之間就實施咁樣，即係可能有啲商鋪啊，可能其實佢哋未必咁快可以做到，我唔知啊，即係咯。即係有陣時我哋睇咧，佢哋用木嗰啲匙羹咧，即係可能啲通粉咧係索晒水，係筆唔到嘅咯，即係點樣做係可以做好啲咯，即係其實好嗰啲餐店其實都有佢哋嘅困難咁樣咯。
For now, restaurateurs say they will need time to find durable replacements for plastic products.
咁但係之前一路我哋覺得客戶同個實際嘅狀況係有距離嘅，即係可能口號還口號咯咁樣。咁跟住我到時為咗方便啊咁樣，咁佢都係會選擇翻加錢嚟到要個外賣餐具，就 rather 真係去諗下點解我哋要做呢件事咧？喺開初嘅時候咁樣。
Hong Kong restaurants and businesses also have to keep track of changing government requirements. The city's environmental authorities have already come under fire for saying plastic containers can be used for sushi takeout. This 6-month grace period should allow some time for the city government, residents, and restaurants to work out the kinks of the new restrictions, with the hope that soon, disposable plastic products will be a thing of the past. Luffy Lee and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
After the Chinese Civil War, refugees arriving here in Taiwan were forced to build shelters wherever they could. Bryn Thomas looks at how these now disappearing villages from that time helped structure a cultural identity.
If you find yourself in Taoyuan, take a walk to one of the military dependence villages on the edge of town. Between where the high-rises end and the cemeteries and mountains begin, you'll find a tangle of narrow alleys passing through squat brick buildings with black tile roofs. Self-contained communities like these used to be common in Taiwan, providing housing for uprooted Chinese soldiers and services for their families.
这边以前还有一个杂货店，我的同学一个住68号，那还有一个64号，这个小时候的记忆全部都在这个村子里面。
Liang is descended from one of the more than 600,000 Republic of China soldiers that retreated to Taiwan with the nationalists at the end of the Chinese Civil War. They and their families were forced to settle on public land in the 40s and 50s, building temporary shelters from whatever was at hand. Most came with nothing and for years relied on military rations.
以前因为我们砂糖它不是一包一包，它是整桶或是一个大麻布袋，所以你要1斤，好，我们就称1斤给你；你要半斤，我们就称半斤。所以像这个油也是，米也是，小时候的最爱，金干妈藤。以前小时候基本上是没有叫零用钱这个钱，这个糖果我们就是很省着吃，通常都是舔了一口，舔了几口以后，我们会放在塑胶袋里面，然后想到再吃。
For years, poverty was a fact of life in military villages. Any extra outdoor space was turned over to growing food. Okay. And residents got used to living shoulder to shoulder with very little privacy.
大家都知道眷村房子很小，那么大家洗澡呢，通通都在厨房里。然后他那男孩子也会很皮，看到谁家的厨房是没开灯的，到了晚上不亮灯的，就在想他家一定有人在洗澡。那他就会去想尽办法去这样跑过这个巷子去给他敲敲，或者丢个小石头，反正让里面的人很紧张就对了。里面的那个女生一叫，那个妈妈们一定会出来。 又吼又叫，究竟是谁呀？是哪一个人啊？
But with this forced proximity came community. Military dependence villages were a hub of mainlander culture in Taiwan. Their residents spent their lives packed in together, sharing recipes, and looking after each other's kids.
在眷村来讲，应该算是一个时代的产物，太辛苦了，颠沛流离。有了眷村以后，他就有点有根的感觉。我们到台湾来以后，就住这里是住最久，盖了这个眷舍，我们就在这边就住了40-50年啊，已经是不能讲第二个家，这就是完全就是我的家。
But as time passed, these thrown-together communities began to show their age. By the 1980s, they were widely considered to be slums, and by the 90s, urban planners were eyeing them for renewal. Today, only about 30 of some 900 dependence villages still exist, and lawmakers around Taiwan are scrambling to preserve them and the cultural heritage they represent.
如果我们要保存这个眷村文化，单靠一个眷村事实上是有不足的。眷村铁三角串联这几个基地，让它成为一个眷村文化传承的共同的平台。
Today, many of Taiwan's remaining dependence villages are used as exhibition spaces, while others sit empty on the edge of town. As they fast disappear from the urban landscape, volunteers such as these hope they'll remain part of Taiwan's cultural memory. Scott Huang and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Follow us on social media for the latest updates. Finally, check out this stunning footage of 3 Russians parachuting down from the stratosphere above the North Pole. I'm Eric Gao. Have a great weekend.